This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! They're the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up, though? It is another Tuesday. This is Knockouts and 3 Counts, and it's almost fight week, and it's a good thing that tonight's guest nickname is The Heat, because I'm hoping she's not only going to bring the Heat to the ring next week on February 2nd for the undercard of Claressa Shields. I hope she can bring some of that California weather here to Michigan, because we're currently freezing our balls out. But we've got a debut on the show tonight. We've got Sammy The Heat Worthington. Appreciate your time.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, I'm going to try to bring the heat, both in and out of the ring. We'll see.
We need it, man. My toes are frozen over here.
Yo, dude, we were just talking about that. So, like, I work, those that watch the show know I work for the post office, and I used to deliver the mail. Now I work inside. But prior to that, I also used to work for UPS. So I apparently worked for the enemy, too. But, they. I'll never forget having steel toe boots on and walking through the snow to go deliver these people's mail, and they just didn't shovel it at all. And I quickly found out why wearing steel toe boots in cold ass weather like that was like the worst idea ever. I drove home barefoot in 2-degree weather because all the water on the steel toe part. I was like, man. So I'll take it. We don't have all the snow here right now, so at least you ain't got to deal with that as you come in here. Shout out to everybody that's joining the stream. Make sure you hit that like button, share button, all those things. But that's as good a place to start as anyway. So, we've covered the last 2 fights for Claressa here in Michigan, and that's where I first got to see some of your handiwork. So before we get to the fight that you've got coming up next week, you got to tell me, what are your thoughts on the mitten, and what are your thoughts on the last time you were out here in the Motor City?
Well, I had actually, that was the first time I'd ever been to Detroit in July. And so I'd been to Michigan. I did some amateur tournaments there, but it was the first time in the city. And so that was, we really enjoyed it. I didn't really know what to expect, but we had some good food, and fighting in Little Caesars Arena was a dream. So that was super, super cool. Really just, I felt at home. I had been doing a lot of like local shows and still really great shows. Like, I got a lot of experience, but being on that level in that arena, as soon as I walked in, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I was created to do. And I really felt like I was where I was supposed to be. So it was such an experience, and it's going to be, I know that next weekend is going to be even better. It's going to be more fireworks, fighting in Claressa's hometown with Claressa. Like, that's going to be freaking iconic.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because anyone that's watched the last couple fights of hers, she's had quite the elaborate entrances on this one. We had Cash Doll come out, you've got the whole thing. She's coming out buffs and all. You got to tell me, what are your thoughts on what we've seen of the champ, and what are your thoughts on fighting on the same card as her again on February 2nd?
So I actually got to do a lot of my camp with her in Atlanta.
Nice.
So that was one of my last questions for her was, so how are you going to top last fight's walkout? And I can't say much, but all I can say is that she's going to do it. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, it's really cool. She's always been, when we got connected in the amateurs, from day one, she's always been that kind of like big sis. Like, she's just a little bit older than me, but just as far as like boxing sister, paving the way for me. She was doing that for me in the amateurs. And so it's really cool. Like, she won the JOs the year before I won the JOs. And it was just like boom, boom, boom. Each year she kind of like paved the way for me in my amateurs. And I feel like now she's really paved the way for a lot of us women in the pros. And so to be able to do this alongside her has been like really sweet. I keep saying that it's full circle in both of our careers, which is really cool. And it's a unique space to be with her in our relationship, but it's just really surreal to have your mentor be like hand in hand with you, and to get to not just like have her pour into me like when her career is over, but she's still she's at the peak of her career. So, she's still climbing and doing the thing. And so to get to do that alongside her is just so cool.
It's got to be a bit of a sorry, Kyle. It's got to be a bit of a motivation factor too to see like where women's boxing is at this point, to be able to be on the undercard of somebody that's, like you say, you've kind of followed in the footsteps of, and now watching her put on these big events in her hometown and stuff. It's got to be a real inspiration to you to see where, if you continue that ascent that you're already making, where you could end up as well.
Exactly. It's just really showing me, what can be done, how to do certain things, and really instilling in me dreams that I didn't even know I had. If that makes sense, things that she's doing that I'm like, wow, like I can do that and I want to do that. Cause sometimes you see people, the people that you're looking up to do things and you don't necessarily, that's not for you. And that's fine because, they're doing it, but I'm seeing things that she's doing that I'm like, whoa, like I could see what God could do through me in that. Like, that's really, really sweet.
Yeah, it almost seems more obtainable when it's somebody close to you that's, going through the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about, you guys getting to know each other through the amateurs and stuff like that. I came up through the amateur scene here in Detroit too. So with that being said, you got to tell me, we pride ourselves on getting to know people a little bit when they come on the show. So talk to me about how you found your way to boxing, because one thing that I found from doing this show is like, everybody has like a different walk to how they got there. Everybody has a different way that they fell into fighting. Like for me, it was never, ever, ever something that I ever thought I would ever do in my life, being a kid that's got cerebral palsy and Crohn's disease and all those kind of things. And then it got to a point where my mom put me in a gym where I was the only white kid. And the next thing you know, I was taking a fight outside in the middle of the Detroit next to the gay strip club. So, everybody's got different journeys to how they find themselves in the ring. So how did you find yourself in boxing?
Yep. So number one, typical boxing story right there. That's hilarious.
I mean, people that know. If you know, you know.
You're right. And I definitely know what it's like to be the white dot in the gym, and the white female dot in the gym is even more unique. It is. And it's actually funny. I see a Rocky poster in the back, right there. So that's how I got into boxing. My little brother fell in love with the Rocky movies, and so he was this little 6-year-old chunk of a kid, just punching the air, beating up on the walls and everything that he could. And the funny thing is, my dad is a pastor, and so he was at a pastor's luncheon, and he just randomly met our first coach. This pastor was talking about a gym that he had that he used, as a ministry to help get kids off the streets and whatnot. And so my dad was like, I have a 6-year-old son, would love to check out the gym, like just so he could see it. And the coach was like, yeah, he actually can't start fighting till he's 8, but like he can start training now. Blah, blah. And my dad was like, whoa, like let's just see, how he likes it. And so my brother, he gets in there and he goes 18 rounds straight as a 6-year-old, like just no quit in this kid. And so he starts and just falls in love with it. And I was doing the conventional sports, and I was very much so a tomboy, like, very athletic. But my mom, she called me her prissy little tomboy because I was very much so a girly girl. Like I liked my girl things. And so it's just so weird to say this part of the story, but I thought that boxing was too manly for me. I just didn't want to get into that world. And I got coerced into it because it's a good workout for my other sports. So I finally tried it. I'm sparring because my competitive nature takes over, and I'm like, let's see if I'm any good at this. I'm sparring this guy. We're just using the jab. I'm getting hit because I need to see if I can take it. I'm like, I don't like this, but I can take it. I'm tough. And then I remember I hit him, and his head snapped back, and his eyes got big, and he goes, "Oh shoot!" And ever since then,
that was it right there.
Like that, I will never forget that moment because it was so pivotal.
It's funny you mentioned the Rocky movies though, because honestly, I thought that was a true story until I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. I actually thought that was like a real thing.
Right.
I mean, you get the mix of like you hear the name Rocky Marciano and all these names. It's like, okay, it must have been a real thing. Nobody told me different. And then
Right.
I mean, guy
Well,
like
he
me,
used
I thought
so
I could
many
do that
real
shit. But
stories. Like
yeah,
he was inspired by real boxers.
real
So
inspirational story too. So it's like this is like real life. Everybody wanted to be a boxer at my age, but then everybody starts fighting in the playground. And then I was on the other end. I got hit once. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna play basketball. I'm good.
That's funny. And I played basketball, and I was like, "Bye, I need to go fight."
I'm gonna go play basketball. I'm good on this.
That's funny.
She said, "You're weak sauce, J-Bone."
Yeah, look, hey, even at 10 years old, man's got to know his limits, and I know what my limits are. It's not getting punched in the face. So kudos to you guys.
I'm not mad at it.
I'm here to cheer you guys on, though, all day.
I respect that.
I thought it was great. You talk about an eye-opening experience. Normally, when people say that, they talk about their own eyes opening. You punch somebody, and that essentially is what opened your eyes to the sport. Yeah.
You know, and it's funny you say that because Corey and I have known each other for the better part of 20 years. Like Corey actually got to be at some of those fights that we were talking about those shifty,
fight,
Corey.
Huh?
Dude, Corey was there at the fight.
Yeah.
No, not at that one. You weren't.
Not that particular one, but I was at a couple of the smoke shows at the gym.
You were there when I found out in a hurry why
one.
there's a such thing as weight classes. When the guy that I was supposed to fight didn't show up, and then I'm like, fuck it. I know I hit hard, so we'll be all right. And I'll never forget. You know, the same way you had your aha moment. My first one was in that fight in the parking lot because dude was kicking my ass for the first 2 rounds. And I finally made him miss, and I hit him about as hard as I've ever hit anybody in my life, to where like I felt my knuckles hit him through the glove and everything. And we had like the amateur style gloves on too, so they were only like the small ones. And I hit the guy, and I'm like, oh shit! Like if I had like taken the time to like jump on him, it would have been done with. But I like hesitated for a second, and then there was that fight where it's basically one of those things where I was supposed to fight at 125. That guy never showed up. I ended up fighting a guy who was 6 foot 145. It was not my smartest idea. He knocked me out in the last 30 seconds of the fight after I'd almost dropped him in round 1, and then I'm just like, son of a bitch. Yeah. And then at that point, I learned
Rocky story, right? I'm telling you, man.
All right, Scott. Shout out to Scotty and Team Buck page over there. What do you think about women's boxing being the 2-minute rounds? Do you want to see it go to 3 rounds? Do you think it would help more for it to be 3 rounds? What are your thoughts on that?
So I was just asked this question like 2 days ago. And my personal style would thrive in a 3-minute round. So I'm all for it. I know that might be like other people might have different opinions, but I think as a whole, us women want to see equality across the board. And if you look at the amateurs, we've moved to 3-minute rounds. Like my last amateur fight actually was my only 3-minute round, because then I ended up turning pro shortly after they changed from 4 2-minute rounds for women to 3-minute rounds like the men. And so I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. I mean, Amanda Serrano showed that 2 women went 12 3-minute rounds. And then she's still fighting. Like, you know, they're both still fighting. So it's not like something happened crazy in those 12 rounds, in those extra minutes per round, that, you know, they were in danger by any means. And so I definitely think that women would be able to thrive having that extra minute per round.
I completely agree with that, and I'm glad to hear that, because my whole thing is this, like, you know, and again, maybe this is like, you know, the fighter in me talking or things like that too, but like at the end of the day, we all know what we're getting ourselves into, whether you're a male, female. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman fighting women or a guy fighting guys. Like, ultimately, you know the dangers that you're taking when you step in there. Yeah. So the way I see it, and I've always, and this has just been always my own, you know, like standpoint on it. Like, you guys should be allowed to fight the same way that men do. Number one, I think an extra minute would also make women's fights more entertaining at times, and I would think would create more finishes, because a lot of fights, it seems as though it's like just when you start to get like a read on your opponent, or just when you start to like get going or get in your groove or get in the flow, with it being 2-minute rounds, it feels like you end up running out of time. So like, just from watching it from the other side, and that's like coming up from amateurs and all the other stuff, like I just don't see, like, I don't see how that's really helping anybody. You guys are fighting without headgear, so it's the same as fighting a men's pro fight. The only thing you're doing is taking a minute off the rounds. Like, I've never understood that.
And I definitely think that, the way that women, if you look at, and this is a very generic, generalized statement, but men typically fight a slower pace fight, and then women, we fight a quicker pace fight. Now, that could be just because of how women are. We are really tough, and we're pretty fierce and kind of scary. And we're just, go, go, go. But it could also be that we have a minute less. And so we have less time. And so we feel like we've got to, keep that pace up. And so I think that, maybe stylistically, it would allow us to show more of that finesse, more of the technique, more of the strategy behind what we're trying to do. Because like you just said, we will get in this rhythm, get our momentum, and then ding, ding, you've got that minute break, and that can kind of halt what you're trying to create.
Absolutely. Agreed. Absolutely. And, and the thing of it is, I'm hoping, especially now that we're like, we cover all the combat sports on here as well as pro wrestling. So like, we've had both of the female BKFC champs, Britain Hart and Christine Faria, on the show multiple times. And it's like, seeing women, doing stuff like bare knuckle, you've got MMA being the way it is. Like, I'm really hoping that that's definitely something that can change. And I mean, you already led into something else I wanted to ask you about. I mean, like, you being a pro female fighter, I mean, what were your thoughts on watching that fight with the most recent fight with Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor? And what do you think that did for women's boxing, being that that's like the most watched female fight of all time?
I definitely think, we won't really get into my opinions on Jake Paul and all that, but I definitely, aside from, how I think he, came on the scene in boxing and my opinions on that, I definitely think that he's for women's boxing. And so that was a very strategic move for him to put Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor on like a big promoted card like him and Mike Tyson. Because he knew that boxing fans and people that didn't care anything in the world about boxing would want to watch that. And so to put them as the co-main was really strategic and a great move for women's boxing. And it was cool because that's my weight class. And I'm actually #1 in the WBA. So I am, I'm the mandatory for that sanctioning body for Katie Taylor. So I'm like, cool, like that's
run that next.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm here, ready, like call me up. But I definitely was able to see, that's where I'm going, and that's my trajectory. And I thought it was a great fight. It showed the world, like I said, there were boxing fans definitely tuned in, but there were people that had never seen a women's fight ever that were able to see, one of arguably the greatest ever. I would argue that there's Claressa Shields fights that are going to be higher ranked than that, but I definitely think that that's one of the top ones ever. And that was so cool to be able to see that on that platform, the first Netflix streamed event, boxing event. And it was just really legendary.
Yeah. I mean, everybody, I know my mom called me to ask me if I was watching it,
Right.
like the Tyson and, Paul event. So that being said, like you say, it was a very strategic move to put that there. That being said, it was also on those two ladies to perform the way that they did, and they absolutely did. It was the fight of the night by far.
Oh, easily.
And for them to be able to deliver on that level with that many eyeballs of just casual fans that may or may not even care about boxing. They may just care for the spectacle that was a Tyson Paul event.
Yeah.
For them to walk away with that, feeling the way that they did about that fight, it has to do so much for women's boxing, A, and then B, like you said, just the trajectory of where this can really end up. I mean, it's crazy, honestly.
Right. And the way I see it, women, we're going to shine. We just need that platform. And so for them to have the platform, like I didn't even hit on, I love that you said like it was on them to perform, but like I didn't even view it that way because I'm like, they're going to like give them the platform, give them the place to shine, and we are going to, and that's how I feel about myself, being able to be signed with Claressa Shields and T-Rex Promotions and Salida Promotions. I knew that as soon as I got that opportunity that I'm getting now, like the world is gonna see who the Heat is, and that's how I feel about women's boxing. It's like if you give us the opportunity, we're gonna show you who we really are.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, Corey a lot of times ends up calling fights with me as well, and we've got to call quite the bevy of them at this point. We always make a joke on commentary. It's like, man, you hit the nail on the head when you said that the ladies get in there and scrap. Like even if they might not be like the most technical of fights every time, they're getting in there and they're throwing down. Like so that it's funny you say that because it's like literally. I get people that'll ask questions all the time, especially with like doing commentary and things like that. Like, what do you think when you see two women in there fighting? Or what do you think when I'm like, bro, like, first of all, I've been around this stuff since I was 13 and I'm 32. So number one, I've seen a lot of fights and I've seen pretty much about everything that you can think that can happen, from somebody getting their arm broke to somebody getting knocked out to everything in between. People not making it there because of weigh-ins, not having a good weight cut. I literally just judged a fight a few weeks ago where the guy showed up and didn't have a cup, didn't have a mouthpiece, didn't have a coach, didn't have shorts. And my homie that was fighting him had to wrap his hands before he beat him up. And it was so it's one of those things. It's like you really see like the full gamut of those kind of things. But Scotty's got another question for us in the comments. So with that being said, and you being a fan of the idea of 3-minute rounds, are you training the 3-minute rounds, or are you training longer than 3-minute rounds? Like, or do you stick to the 2-minute rounds so you're more used to what it is come fight time?
So throughout the majority of camp, I do 3 to 4 minute rounds. And so it's like in between 3 and 3.5. Sometimes we'll go 4 or 5 minute rounds, but that's few and far between. And it's if we're working on like a specific thing with like throwing combinations or conditioning. That's the whole goal of using the longer rounds is for conditioning. But I consistently train 3-minute rounds at the beginning of camp. And then at this point, about the 2 to 3 week out mark, then I'll transition to 2-minute rounds so they can get timing down. I do 2-minute rounds, 30-second break, again, to keep my conditioning up, get that recovery quicker. And then I'll spar 2 to 3 times, like an actual fight. So the 2-minute rounds, 1 minute off. But typically it's going to be consistently 3-minute rounds, which is why I feel so comfortable saying I could fight 3-minute rounds. I'm fighting an 8-round fight next weekend. If they wanted to change in the contract that it was going to be 3-minute rounds at a week and a half out, I would say yes.
See, she's got that dog in her already. You already see it. See, Scotty coming with all the questions out here. That was another one I was going to get to. Out of all the promoters you could have chose, talk to me about working not only with Dimitri, Salida, but talk to me about working with Claressa. I mean, we talked about, that you guys knew each other through the fight game and stuff like that. But talk to me about what she brings to your career on the managerial end of it.
So I have said this multiple times, actually, and a couple times on a platform like this. But this is the main reason. Well, number one, I felt like for me, I don't make any decision unless I feel like this is what the Lord is leading me to. Jesus is why I box, and he is guiding my every move. And I got to, lead Claressa to Christ at the Olympic Training Center. So we are connected in a deeper level than just in boxing and friendship. So in that regard, it was a no-brainer to sign with Claressa. But as far as on the boxing side, when Claressa talks, people listen. And so for her to be able to advocate for me, she's believed in me from day one. Like I said, we started together in the amateurs on Team USA. So not just like she saw me coming up and then, she saw me rise up to that that level, we met on that level. So she got to see me on, you know, the national Olympic qualifier level. And so we were fighting, you know, duels against China. We were at the world championships together. So she has believed in who I am as a fighter ever since we got connected. And now she's able to advocate for me. She's able to be that spokesperson for me to really show the world that I am who I say I am. And now she's just giving me, like I had mentioned, if we get that platform, that opportunity, we will deliver. And she's just giving me that. So it was really, like I said, it was a no-brainer on all fronts.
I can only imagine.
Why she's the GWOAT, man. The
She's the GWOAT. I'm saying. Why wouldn't I?
I was about to say, I mean, you already put it there. We've actually gotten to interview Claressa a few times. Last time we had her on the show, on the actual show part of it, we talked to her about her transition over to MMA for PFL and those things as well. But you've touched on it a couple times, and it's something that I love to get into on the show. As I mentioned, we like to talk a lot about, we like to talk about like people's inner workings, like what goes into their fights. Like with the pro wrestling side of things, you know, we've got a segment that tends to be funnier, but we call it like locker room etiquette. That's like, what are your pet peeves of the locker room? You know, we get everything from just funny stuff.
Have we ever done that for a boxing guest?
We did. We turned it to where it was like fight week, like if you had like fight week superstitions, which we'll get to that. But yeah, the pro wrestling side of things,
etiquette too. I mean,
yeah, you know, like
everybody
we've had
some crazy pet peeve.
I bet you she probably has. So you know what? Just because you brought it up, I'm going to leave that one for the end of it. But that wasn't the question I was going for with this one. I wanted to touch on the fact, you know, you've brought up a couple times about how important your faith is. I'm a Christian myself. I got saved probably 11 years ago now. And so for me, it changed a lot of the way that I think on things. Again, Corey's known me for a long time, and just my outlook on like what I want out of life and the legacy I want to leave on this earth and the things that I want to accomplish out of life changed a lot. So talk to me a little bit about that. How does that impact like the way you fight? How does that manifest itself when you're getting ready to fight? Because that's the thing too. I think there's like this common misconception that if like you're a Christian or you have faith or anything of that ilk, whatever it is, even for like Muslim people or whatever it might be, that because you're a Christian or you have faith, that just means you're supposed to be like this timid, like, oh, you know what I mean? And then you choose a sport like fighting. I mean, for me, I've always put it to people like this, right? Like for me, my faith was a simple thing. Like I said, growing up with cerebral palsy and Crohn's disease, I've had a few, near-death health scares, you know what I mean? And like once you go through those, it's kind of one of those things where when you make it on the other side of it, it's like, you know, whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, whatever it is, like at a certain point, if there wasn't a God, then I would like between the things I've had with health, you know, just recently my mom had a heart attack. I was the only one home. I happened to be home that day. You know what I mean? And everything worked itself out. So I've been through enough situations that for me, whether anyone else believes or not, I can't really be convinced otherwise just because I've seen, you know, him move in different ways. So how does that work for you? And how does that help you in the boxing ring?
So it's funny you said that you became a Christian around 11 years ago. Next month, February 8th, will be 10 years for me. Nice. So February 8th, 2015 is when I fully gave my life to Christ. I stepped off the throne of my heart and allowed him to lead me. And I mentioned when I first started boxing that my dad's a pastor when I was telling that story. So I always joke that I've been in church 9 months before I was born because he's been a pastor my whole life. And that was both a blessing and a curse. And what I mean by that is, you know, I never went a day without knowing the name of Jesus, but I also viewed that as my dad's job. And so it's kind of like obligatory going to church. I lived a very double life way of living. I would have, you know, my boxing side, my school side, my personal friends, and then I'd have the church Samantha. So it was like two different versions of me. And I always say that the Lord pursued me through boxing, which is why, and there's a lot of reasons why boxing is so important to me because I feel like that's what I was created to do. But there's also this level of it saved my life that I have. And so, you know, through Jesus used it through boxing. He was the one that saved me. But I definitely, you know, was pulled out of a lot of mistakes because of boxing. You know, I can't go to this party because I'm training. I can't, you know, do this because I got a tournament going on X, Y, and Z. But it also led me to create that as my identity. So that's what I was. I was the boxer girl. Everything that I did was, how is it going to affect boxing? Everything was through the lens of how can I glorify myself in the sport. And then, you know, changing my life when he came and just completely gave me new eyes to see. You mentioned it changed your perspective. Like, that's what I feel. I feel like I have a new set of eyes to see the world. And when that happened, it was funny because I fought with a lot of anger before, and then that was relief. Like, I felt like that was
I
lifted
did
from
too.
me. Yeah. And that is really common, actually. But when that was taken from me, I kind of had this like identity. I mean, I knew who I was. I was really my full self when I received Christ. But in boxing, I had this identity crisis because I'm like, wait, who am I as a fighter now? Because I don't have that. You mentioned I have that dog in me, and that dog in me is God now. And so it's like I had to kind of pull from a different source of strength. And whenever I turned to Jesus for that, it was like I leveled up, which is it's funny. My coach, he actually, well, one of my coaches, Mike Guy, he accepted Christ last January, 2 days before a fight. Completely incredible experience and story. But he said when he received Christ, he was like, now I know why you always seem like you're pulling from a different level of strength. And he used those words. I feel like I'm leveling up. And that's really what I felt like. I felt like, you know, I'm not looking at my opponents as my enemy anymore. Like, I love them, which can be paradoxical because you know, you love this person that you're gonna go beat the crap out of. But I've gotten to really, because of that, like, deep care for the other person and respect, I've gotten to pour into my opponents in a way that I wasn't able to before. I wasn't in a place to view them as God does. And I've really gotten to connect with people on a deeper level. So I think that, you know, because of that, the Lord has given me a lot more opportunities to share who I am, to share my story. But then also, as a fighter, I have, you know, one of the Beatitudes, it says, blessed are the meek. And that does not mean blessed are the weak. Meekness is not weakness. Meek is actually where you get your strength because it's humility. And so where I pull my strength from now is a strength that might to the world seem upside down, but it's actually a deeper and stronger level of strength than I was pulling from before. So I feel like I am a way more I'm a way more full and complete fighter now than I definitely ever was before.
Totally respect that. Shout out to Scotty in the comments. We appreciate it, man. You know, it's funny you say that because, like, when I first started boxing, so I started with boxing and then I went from boxing to jiu-jitsu and then that kind of transferred into MMA and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I feel like you're like, if you could only hear the conversations that my mom and I have had over the years when it comes to fighting, because I was just like that. Like, when I first started fighting, I had to hate the person that I was fighting. I'd have to find something that they did that pissed me off just to get me in, like, the mindset to, like, okay, it's game time. To where, like, once I think, well, part of it's my faith and part of it's just becoming older. But, like, as you get older, you know, and once you get saved and things of those nature, like, it no longer becomes, okay, I want to go in this to smash this person. I want to go into this so that I can, you know, blast somebody. What up, though, brother? I appreciate you. But, you know, it's not about going in here, I want to smash this person. Now, that's not to say that you don't still have fights where it's like, you just might not like the person. We just might not get along, or there might be something that they do that just annoys me, or, you know, it could be any of those. But, like, I don't know if you would agree, but for me, it became something like, okay, I want to train so that I can compete at my best. I feel like as long as I'm able to compete at my best and I've done everything that I know I need to do, whether that's training, whether that's putting the extra miles in, whether that's, you know, it could be any one of, you know what I mean? So you could, it could be any one of those different things. But it got to a certain point for me where it was like, you know what?
I've busted my ass. I've done everything that I can do at this point. So at this point, all I can do is lift this fight up and the whole thing to God. And whatever happens after that, whether I win, lose, left, right, or the other, you know what? If it's his will for me to win, I'll win. I'm going to give it everything I got and I'm going to try to win. I'm going to try to finish the fight. But you know what I mean? That doesn't always happen. So, you know what I mean? Like, it just became like a shift more so in like how I looked at fighting, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much about like, and I don't know if it's, and I want to know, is that the same for you? But like, it just became, it wasn't so much about, obviously I wanted to win. Everybody wants to win. If you're not getting in there and you don't want to win, this is not the sport. Like, you don't need to be in the ring. This is not I've seen people get hurt real bad inside a ring. So it's like, that's not the, you know, you hear the saying, you know, you don't play boxing. But for you, was it one of those kind of things where like, once you got saved, it was like, you know what, as long as I do everything that I know I'm supposed to do and everything that's within my power to be able to control, if God wants me to win, then I'll win. But that's kind of like where my mindset, at least as far as competition, shifted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I actually, in the prayer when I received Christ, I said, you know, I give you boxing. I released the sport because that was something that I held on to so tightly. That was who I was. And I knew that I needed to surrender everything for him to truly, you know, change who I was for him to make me who he created me to be. And so I said, you know, if you want to break my leg tomorrow and I never box again, that's fine. Like and if you would have known me before, you'd have been like, what did you just say? Like, you'd be like, this is not the same person. And I wasn't, and I'm not. And that's the beauty of it. And then literally a month later, I got invited to be back on Team USA. It was like such a beautiful transition and like, you know, chronological event that happened. Like the series of events was so intentional. And so it was kind of like a sweet gift of him saying like, now you get to be who I created you to be, which was a boxer. You know, I gave you this love, this talent for a reason. And so you had mentioned that what I was hearing is like, you know, everything happens as it should. That's what that's the perspective shift. It's no longer like, oh shoot, these things are happening to me.
It's
or,
my
you know,
fault because I didn't do this, that, or the third.
You're to blame or blah, blah, whatever. It's not, you're not playing this blame game or like trying to figure out why. It's like, oh, this was exactly how it was supposed to happen. And that's a freeing place to be. It is a peaceful place to be. And it's really just like a calm, it's a fully satisfied place to be. And that's definitely what I feel. And another thing that I feel is on top of that, it kind of goes hand in hand, is I feel like I'm created to do this. And so I feel completely at home and full whenever I'm doing it. Like I feel like my fullest self. And this is so weird to think about, but I feel like my fullest self when I'm in the ring fighting.
I
like
totally understand it.
Yeah.
I totally understand it because it's like, for me, fighting stuff was first, and then I got into the broadcasting stuff after the fact. You know what I mean? And now it's like getting to do some of the stuff we've done. Like I literally, and you'll be able to appreciate this too. So I literally had to I had this conversation with both of these two, you know, before the year ended. Cause like I mentioned, you know, my mom had that heart attack. And so it was one of those things where like trying to kind of get yourself like back on the rails after all that stuff was done. But like the same way, like you said, with fighting, like I loved fighting, love it. I still love to train. I knew I was never going to be like, you know, on the level of where you guys are at or things like that. But it was one of those things where like with the thing with the heart attack, I had to sit back and think. I'm like, in one calendar year, so you're pissed because you didn't get to do this or this fell through or whatever it is. In one calendar year, you worked with WWE, AEW, TNA. We did the pay-per-view for Claressa. We had fighters from UFC, BKFC, all this stuff. And it's like, you find yourself, like you said, with boxing, right? Like boxing isn't usually what people think of when they think of like somebody who's got faith and all those kind of things. But it's like using different vessels to get there. For me, I feel like doing the broadcasting thing and things like that, because we get to have conversations like these, because I try to find different things like that to talk to people in, so that it's not just, hey, who are you going to fight? Hey, how do you think you're going to beat him? You know what I mean? Like just your stereotypical stuff. So like in the same way you say that with fighting, I totally feel like that when it comes to the show too, because we get to talk about things that people like. I can't tell you how many times in the 8 years we've done this that, like, you know, people will be like, wow, I totally never thought that we were going to get into a conversation like that. And I would have never knew, you know, that stuff's being in there. So you never know who's watching it. You never know, you know, who those things can help and all those things. So it's definitely something that I'm glad that we got to talk a little bit about. But, you know, we talk about nicknames and how people got names, especially with us covering the pro wrestling side of thing. Where does Sammy the Heat come from?
I love this question. So my maiden name is actually Kinchin. So my name is the Heat because if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. However,
No shit.
then I got married and now it doesn't work, but we kept the heat.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Was not the answer I was expecting.
I was not expecting that at all.
That's the best. That's the best answer to it, though, because it was not at all what I thought we were gonna get. Oh shit! We got a couple more questions for you. We got another one in the comments. Who's your favorite male boxer? And if you could be on the undercard of any male star, who would it be? If you could fight in any arena venue in the world, where would it be?
I like that one.
So I'm going to start with the last part because it's interesting. It's only MSG because I got to, it's a personal story to me. So I got to go to New York with my cousin, my grandma, and my great aunt. This was several years ago, like 7 years ago or something. And so it was just, you know, a random trip. We were going to New York City, you know, explore the city. I'd been once before, but I'd never been to MSG. And so we got to tour the locker room and everything. And I step out into the arena and I go, and I'm so amateur at this point. If you would have asked me my entire amateur career if I would turn pro, I would have said never, like ever. And so I never had a desire to turn pro. Olympics were always my thing. And so I step out and I'm like, I think I'm gonna fight here one day. And I like that was a very like powerful thing for me. It was a very like surreal moment because I'm like, why would I say something like that? I don't even want to be pro. So definitely there. That would be a fulfillment of, I believe, a promise that I have. And so I'm gonna say right now that I will fight there one day. I'm gonna not even say probably. I'm gonna fight there one day. And so that would be my answer to that. My favorite male boxer, one of right now is Vasily Lomachenko, and I
a dog.
Yes, and I'm gonna say this. I am not at all. He is a dog. He has got probably the best footwork I've ever seen. But I'm not even picking him for skill alone. I think that what makes a true champion is how you are in and out of the ring. And I just think that he is just very humble and he just seems like a kind heart. I don't know him personally, but I enjoy how he puts his family first, he puts his country first. Like I think that the way that he acts and his integrity is really admirable. And then on top of that, he's insanely skilled. His discipline and work ethic is like none I've ever seen before. And so I really enjoy watching him. I enjoy like just how he interacts with people. So he's definitely up there. I like Usyk for some of the same reasons. I think that he's hilarious. I love watching him dance. Like when you watch, which you'll see, you know, next weekend, like, and in December and a little bit in July. I didn't really get like a full walkout in July, but I love like fun walkouts. I love dancing. I love like just being yourself. I love when like that's why I love Claressa's walkouts. Like she's just very much so herself and like her personality shines through. And so I love that about Usyk. That would be, you know, fighting on either one of their undercards would be insane. I feel like Usyk would probably be more attainable just because he's still, you know, at that building stage in his career. Not that Vasily isn't, but he's a little bit more on the tail end of his career. I definitely think he has so much more in the tank.
Hope
So
we
that's
get
not. I'm not.
Loma before he goes.
Well, right. For sure. But yeah, I just as far as like, you know, where my career is, where Vasily's is, I don't know if that would be something that could be in the future. just based on how cards are made and stuff. But yeah, I think that I answered all of that.
You did a
Yeah,
fine job. Shout out to everybody that's watching. It says we got about 260 in here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the comment button, the share button. Let somebody know. And if you haven't already done so, get you some damn tickets for February 2nd. You might freeze a little bit, but I promise once you get in the arena, Sammy's going to bring the heat. And I was going to say, she took the words out of my mouth, going to bring the heat, and it's going to be on and going. Well, obviously, since we're talking about February 2nd, you got to talk to me. What are your thoughts on your opponent? Let's see if I can get her last name right. Vaida, I have no idea on your last name, so we're going to go with Vaida.
You're going to be better than me.
I was going to say, we're going to go with the first name on this one because I'm going to butcher that so bad.
I've been saying Vaida M. I don't know.
Vaida M.
That one. There you go. How do you feel about Miss M?
Well, come on, Kyle. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Compared to all the
do
other.
it first and tell me how it works.
What?
M. Yeah, I agree.
You're right.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were gonna say.
No. So I think that she's got obviously a lot more experience than me. When I look at the people that she's fought and been in the ring with, and just the sheer number of fights and rounds that she has gone through, I am excited to share the ring with someone with so much experience. Last year alone, she had 8 fights. That is insane. So it's going to be really cool to be able to learn from her and, how she brings out the shine in me. Cause I am a firm believer in that I always rise to the challenge and far exceed what I even know and think that I can, the trajectory that I have in myself. So I'm excited to see what she pulls out of me. And I'm really excited to fight somebody that I haven't fought somebody that is taller than me in a really long time. And as a pro, I think maybe once. And so in that fight, I stopped her in the first round. So I'm hoping that I'm able to show a little bit more of, stylistically how I am able to, break somebody down that fights a little bit more like a boxer, maybe moves a little bit more. She kind of plays with her jab, trying to set things up more. So I'm really excited to, be able to show some things in my arsenal and like stylistically using my footwork, using my body shots to, create openings and more like of those, devastating knockout punches.
I'm putting it in the air. She's coming for people's head.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. Sounds about
I
right.
had the song on there. It's in the air. It's in the air that she's coming to take your head off. Is what time it really is out here. But
with the record, with a record like you got though, when you start talking about knocking people out, I mean, it's you can't just sleep on that. I mean, at this point in your career, what if I'm not mistaken, off the head, it was 7 out of the 10 were KOs. That in the women's side of boxing, you don't see that too often. What do you think makes your power stand out compared to some of the other women?
I think that it's really about how I throw my shots. I, am able to use my whole body. A lot of times you'll see women throw a lot of punches, but they're not, turning their hips, turning their shoulders. They're not following through, knuckles down when they throw. And so I was really blessed to be under the tutelage of James Doolin. He is no longer able to be in my corner now. But he was such a pivotal part of my amateur and then leading into my pro career. He just was able to lay such a solid foundation with the basics. And so that's where I get all of my, fundamentals and technique from. And so that was just ingrained in my brain. And then being able to, like I had mentioned before, training most of my camp with Claressa, she's been able to like reiterate some things and then show me things that on this level that I'm getting to, what is going to be the deciding factor for these fights. And so that's been really cool to learn from somebody, like we had mentioned before, has already been there and, is able to show me like, hey, this is how you get there. And giving, I feel like it's like giving me the cheat codes in some kind of way, which is really cool. But yeah, I think that it's on top of, technique. It's really just I don't stop. Like, you know, you might get hit with one punch and you might be able to recover from that, but then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are coming after that, and like it's just hard to come back from those.
I like it. Punches and bunches. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny. It's funny to hear you say that because, you know, that's something that I was just talking about with somebody here with like some of the boxers that we see in Detroit as they come up, as opposed to like MMA. Like, I think in MMA, you used to see people, you know, they would try to go the route of how boxing does, where you'll see like a lot of boxers where they'll be like 10, 15, 20-0 before they've like really fought, you know, like higher up competition. That's one thing that you said that really sticks out to me that I like hearing in somebody that's on their way up, is that you're trying to increasingly take tougher fights. You're trying, you know, talking about this is only, you know, she might be one of the tallest people that you fought and those kind of things. I think, especially being around it as long as I have, you know, that's something that a buddy of mine and a past guest of the show, Miles Jury, who fought in UFC, Bellator, like that's something I listened to him say a lot on his way up. It's not so much in the amount of wins that you have, what kind of fights are you taking on the way up there? Because then the catch 22 to that is you can have 20 fights, and then by the time you take your first step up fight where they start putting you on cards like that, and then you fight somebody who's for real, and then you find out real quick whether somebody's really for real or not. So like it's funny to hear you say that, because that's something that I've always agreed with and thought on the outside of it. But since you brought up talking with Claressa, since you've talked about, you know, being in this camp, what are your thoughts on how this fight ends up? What are your thoughts on her opponent? Because like you, she's fighting somebody that is bigger than her and was trying to yank the belts off her last week. So with that being said, how do you think this fight goes and how do you see it ending?
You know, if you look at Danielle's record, you know, she's got a great record. She had a good amateur career. So like you can't, the people that are like, oh, well, she doesn't have the experience as you, she blah, blah, blah. You know, you can't say that. She's obviously the bigger opponent. She's taller. This is only Claressa's second fight at heavyweight. So she does have, you know, a challenge ahead of her, as she does in every fight. I don't know a fight that Claressa's ever been in where, as far as at least pro career and amateur, if you look at it, but definitely pro career, where she hasn't had a challenge ahead of her. And so that is just to go ahead and shut that up. She does have something that that she has to really be focused for. She's got to, you know, be disciplined for, and to get to see that, it was cool to, you know, hear her talk and hear her focus and hear her. It's interesting, you know, being in camp with her. She is like me. I'm very laid back in camp. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, we got to, you know, listen to an hour of metal before we go to the gym. And then we got to be there, you know, like I'm just going to listen to metal because I want to listen to it. Like, I'm not needing to, you know, have these, like we mentioned, superstitions. Not saying I don't have them, but I'm not one of those that's like, oh my gosh, gotta be super regimented and oh no, I'm freaking out because it's not. And that's how she is. So it's cool to, you know, be able to like relax and just kind of like groove together in that way. But when we work, like we're working, and it was cool to see her like really lock in for this and know that I don't think that it's going the distance, if I'm gonna be honest. Just, you know, seeing how just her shine and like how much more experience, since I mentioned that Claressa truly does have. Like it is levels. Like Claressa's up here, you know, she's far beyond, she's looking up, you know, on top of the hill down. And it was obvious being able to train alongside her where exactly she is.
I definitely can agree with that, because the way that she blew through Vanessa Johannes with how much, you know, the size difference and all those things, man, that was a nasty fight.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scotty's already asking it. J-Bone said that we need to throw a different side to this question. So for those that are maybe catching the show late, we also double as a pro wrestling show. So before I describe said question, are you a pro wrestling fan at all?
So, fun fact, you know Sting?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So Sting's son lived with my family for like 8 months.
No
Really?
shit. That's
Yeah, so he went to, I'm originally from Lexington, Kentucky, and he went to the University of Kentucky, and we became really good friends with him. So he's kind of like a brother to me, and so Sting was able to connect with my parents, and that family has just become like an extension of our family. So, and I would say yes, but I don't follow it. Like I'm a fan of it because I feel connected to it, but I don't follow it. So
That's dope though. So here's a good story for you with Sting. So I'll never forget. So Sting was on the show, Rhino was on the show, Shawn Michaels was on the show, Kurt Angle was on the show. It was all at the Detroit World Outreach at a church out here. It was shortly after Sting had gotten saved and the whole point of the whole thing. Yeah. It was wild. I'll never forget that show because I went there just thinking, oh shit, this is just a wrestling show. And then I go in there and I'm like, no shit, they got Sting on this thing and Shawn Michaels on this thing. It's funny you say that because I don't know if you caught it, but did you get to catch his last match and how he had all 3 of the kids involved in it?
Yep.
Dude, that was badass.
So that was so, oh my gosh, that was so cool. Definitely, and they were all like different eras of Sting. Like, how cool was that?
That was so badass. And the fact that they got
that was one of the cooler things that AEW's ever done, man.
And that they got Seek and Destroy for the entrance with it too, because that used to be his thing back in the day. Like that shit, like just at the entrance alone, I remember watching it like, oh shit, this is gonna be cool before this even started. Like I mentioned, we've gotten to work with AEW a few times, and I've actually interviewed Sting's partner, Darby Allin, from that night, and it's yeah, man, that was definitely one of, matter of fact. Fun fact, anybody that's new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button or go back and check it out on ko3c.com. But in our year-end awards, my favorite show of 2024 was actually Sting's retirement show, just because from beginning to end, that was like one of the best pay-per-views that AEW had done, and just the amount of stuff that was put in to like that final, like the whole thing from the entrance to the match to how long it was, like the whole thing. And the fact that it happened in Greensboro with the original match with him and Flair being there, that whole thing was bananas. But I've got off on my wrestling tangent for a minute.
I forgot where we're at here. What happened?
I know exactly where we're at because Scotty is keeping me on track over here. Shout out to Scotty. I look forward to seeing you again at the presser and the weigh-ins and stuff. We talk superstitions. Now, as I mentioned, on the wrestling side, we kind of do it as not like a nitpicking or trying to get like information out of people. We do it as like pet peeves that you might have for the locker room. We've had everything from bring your own wrist tape, bring your own squirt bottle, keep your baby mama out the locker room, wash your gear, wash your balls, all kinds of different dumb, stupid stuff like keep yourself in the ring, don't get too big, don't forget to shake people's hands, all those kind of things. So let me flip this to the boxing side of things. You said you have fight week superstitions. So first of all, I have to know what some of those are. And is there anything on fight week that, unless you're trying to feel the heat, I would suggest that you don't do fight week? So on both sides of that question. Okay.
So when I said, I'm not knocking people that have superstitions, I only have a couple, and they're not like even true superstitions. They're like kind of just what my team does. And so I just expect it, like, putting the left glove on first. If the right glove goes on first, you know what I'm going to think? Oh, this is probably going to be the hand that I'm going to knock her out with. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, shoot, we got to take the gloves off, rewrap the hands, do all the things. And, I have my, like, fight underwear that I like to wear. It's really just, like, comfort, It's not even, like, superstitions. It's just, like, I know that I'm going to be comfortable.
That has come up a bunch of times. You're not the only one to say
so
that.
I was like, I figured in the amateurs, I actually had way more superstitions. I always weighed in the same shorts and shirt. And then I always wore the same compression shorts under my trunks. And I always wore the same socks. And they were long socks. And my coach, when I mentioned James Doolin, I actually started working with him before the Olympic qualifier. And when I started working with him, he was like, I hate those friggin' socks. They're so ugly. But I couldn't not wear them because they were my, like, lucky socks. But as far as pet peeves go, oh my gosh. It's funny, my husband's in the other room, so I know that he's hearing this and like, oh, I could name some. But there, it's like inevitable. Every single time we will like post out the fight information and everything, and then I will get like hundreds of people. What time is the fight? Where's the fight? When is the fight? And I'm like,
Or tickets.
guys, like yeah, tickets. Like, how do we get
Yeah.
tickets? Oh my gosh, my favorite one is, okay, is it gonna be live streamed? And I'm like, guys, last fight when I fought with Claressa in July, that was my first time fighting on DAZN. So I posted all the information out on DAZN, blah, blah, blah. And I had somebody be like, oh my gosh, this is $80. Can somebody Facebook Live it?
Oh my god.
I said, what?
What?
Oh my gosh.
You cheap bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's funny because she's a really good friend of mine, and I'm calling her out right now. But I was just like, oh my goodness, like I can't even think about these things right now. So my husband,
How are you gonna live stream it? I'm too busy worrying about trying to knock this chick out, and you want me to
I'm
live
like, what do you
stream
want to
it?
do? Put a GoPro on my glove? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
you got
know.
to set it up in the corner.
Yeah, right. I'm like, oh my goodness. But my husband always puts out multiple posts. And it's everybody messaging me is like, I can't wait for the Chase post this fight. And he's always like, guys, it's like I try to make him not be super rude, but he's always like, do not message Samantha. She does not know, she does not care, blah blah blah. Like, you know, it's so funny.
People don't understand, man.
They
Once
don't.
you get
Past that point, like Corey got to see this. I was the most crotchety motherfucker when I used to fight. Like, especially that day that he was there because the guy I was supposed to fight didn't show up, and then I had to wait around all day. I'm just like, just leave me the fuck alone, and I'll talk to you when it's over with. I was like, I don't want to be talked to. I don't want to be bothered. Leave me the fuck alone, or I might go volcano on you. So it's funny to hear that.
Yeah. And the weird thing is it's a unique for me as a fighter. Because I mentioned, you know, I have a little like some superstitions, but not a ton. And it's really just because I mentioned that I'm going to keep reiterating. I just feel so at home when I'm doing this. So for me, I just want to be like super relaxed and like fight with joy. And like, I'm not, like I mentioned in training, it's the same when I fight. I'm not going to be like, nobody talk to me. I have my headphones on. Don't even look in my direction. Like, that's not how I am. And so it's actually like Chase, my husband, he will have to be like the bouncer in the locker room. And now, you know, at the level that we're fighting at, there's security and, you know, you've got to have credentials and X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But at the local shows, you know, people will be coming back and I'd be like, hey guys, like, come back here. We're just hanging out. And Chase is like, you're about to fight. Like, can we please clear this out? And he's
Lock
the one
in.
that's like, give me a drink. I need to settle down and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm the one about to fight. Like, can we all relax?
I love it. Well, we've gotten through most of our questions. Before I give you one last chance to let everybody know where they can check out the fight, Scotty is like bringing like all the good questions. So if you want to answer this one, you can answer it. If you don't want to answer this one, I get it. But you know, it's a funny one because it's one that anyone who's ever stepped in a boxing gym ever in your life has heard the old wise tale of this one. So it'll be funny to hear what the female side of this one comes with. Swear last question. Some men don't have sex before a fight. Old wife's tale, wise tale, it takes the legs. I just heard her say she's married. So do women feel the same way with the old wise tale of that before fight week?
I'm glad that he contextualized the question that I am married. So this is in the context of marriage. And that's funny. My coach would always say women weaken legs. So that's definitely very prominent in the boxing world. And for me, I'll go a little scientific, not really, but like it's more so for hormones. Like I don't want my hormones to be all out of whack. So if it's something that, you know, I have done in the past, which I normally don't because it's just, I'm not even going to like mess with it. But my perspective is if your body is used to that, then you probably can continue to do, you know, whatever it is that you do. And that's with anything like eating, whatever you're drinking, X, Y, and Z. But it does, and maybe it's a good thing. Like it can help your hormones, maybe it boosts whatever you need. Maybe you get a little extra something. But I don't want to tempt fate in that. So that's a no-go for me. That's just what we've always done since we've been married. Because that is, I was a fighter before we got married. So that was something that was like, oh, wait, now I've got to think about this. So yeah, no, it's we've got like a hard line a few weeks out. So
I appreciate it and respect the way that you answered that question because I was wondering how that one was going to go. I was like, should I put this one up here or should I not put this one up here?
I mean, like I said, in the context of marriage, I will answer that question.
That's one of those well-known wives' tales, though. I feel like.
That's the reason I asked it because it's definitely
never been heard of by anybody.
I remember being 13 years old and having people telling me that shit in the gym.
I mean,
You get ready to fight, and it's like people think that that's a joke, but like you said that you boxed in the tournaments out here, so so it's like I remember from the time that I ever decided I was going to compete, like even at 13, 14. That's a thing. Like it's 100% a thing.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, we appreciate all the time. I said I'd give you one last chance to let everybody know where they can check out the fight. And if you got any last words for your opponent, the floor is yours. And make sure if you guys are in the mitten, make sure you come out February 2nd, Flint, Michigan, the Dorp Financial Center. I've been there for a lot of MMA fights. Don't know I've been there for a boxing fight. Plus, I mean, if you've been following the show, you got MMA on the palette too. You can come check us out at Legends of Combat the night before. But the floor is yours. Let them know what we got in store February 2nd.
So yeah, February 2nd, like you said, the Dorp Financial Center, Flint, Michigan. I'm going to be bringing the heat. I don't care if there's snow or cold. Sammy Worthington's going to be bringing the heat February 2nd. I'm excited to show really another version of the heat. I've been showing snippets for my first two fights under T-Rex Promotions in Salida. Excited to show more because we're coming for those belts. So, I don't have any words for my opponent necessarily, but the owner of those belts, those are mine. So just go ahead and get them shined up for me because I'm coming for them.
You heard it. Fuck around and find out. It's strap season. Hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss any of this coverage. Like I said, we'll be at the weigh-ins. We'll be at the press conferences. We'll be at the post-fight press conference, all those things. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it. And judging by the comments, it seems like we're going to have to do this again the next time you step back into the ring. So I appreciate you coming through, appreciate the time, and I look forward to seeing you in person next week when you get here and freeze your ass off like the rest of us.
Yes.
And I got to wish you good luck on the second.
Same. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, with that said, until next time and any in-between time, hit that subscribe button. You see the link down there if you want to make clips. I know a lot of you guys watch the clips of the show. Check out the Opus clip link and make sure you guys are here because it's also Royal Rumble season and Corey's bitch ass is going to lose that belt that's behind him. So until next time and in between
because it's a vacation.
That's right.
No. Excuses.
We'll talk more about that one later.
You lost, fool. Peace.